part of that is also what Mark is going to talk more about later on, our whole consciousness. This is an ongoing debate. To what an extent can we have a conscious experience without using words? Do words really limit our consciousness? Are they necessary at all for our consciousness? In some way, I think most of us will accept that very much of what is going on in our heads is driven by language, by the ability that we have to form language about the experience that we have within our head. And this creates some interesting possibilities, especially since it's basically the left side of the brain which has the language circuitry in most of us, whereas the right side of the brain for most of us doesn't really have a language and doesn't really express itself in language to the same extent. And for most of us, this probably doesn't really matter very much, since we have two halves of the brain and they usually work together. But there are subjects who have split brain, and they have split brain either from congenital reasons, that the connections between the two halves of the brain simply don't develop, or for surgical reasons that surgeons have decided to cut away the corpus callosum, which is connecting the two halves of the brain, and thereby creating split brain, a so-called split brain patient. This was something that Michael Gazzaniga in the States discovered in the 1960s. So he was investigating quite a lot of these patients who had had this surgery being done. And this is one of the things that he did with these patients. So he was basically letting them see different words here with the different halves of their brains. So in this case, the right hemisphere would be seeing the word key. The left hemisphere would be seeing the word ring. Therefore, when the subject was asked what he was seeing, the left hemisphere would be answering ring, because that's what it saw. However, when the subject was asked to reach out and grasp the object that he had seen with the left hand, which is controlled by the right hemisphere, the subject would reach for, in this case, the key, which was seen by the right hemisphere. So the subject would run into a situation in which he was saying one thing, I have seen a ring, but he would be reaching for a key and ending up with a key in his hand when he had just been saying ring. And of course you can say, don't the subjects get confused in this case? And they actually didn't. And this is one of the descriptions that Gazzaniga had of a patient here who was in this same situation. So he was basically with one half of the brain, the right half of the brain, seeing a snowy landscape, and with the left side of the brain, the foot of a hen. Then he was asked to point to which of the pictures here which was closely associated to what he had just been seeing. And of course, if he has been seeing the foot of a hen here, he would, with his right hand, which is controlled by his left hemisphere, he would be pointing to the head of the hen. Whereas with his left hand, which is controlled by the right hemisphere, he would be pointing to this shovel, because that relates to removing all of the snow. So there would be a discrepancy again, but when the patient was asked about this, he would react by saying, well, it makes perfect sense. It was quite easy. The foot of the chicken fits to the head of the chicken, and you need a shovel to remove chicken manure. So they come up with explanations for why they do things in this weird way. So for them, they don't experience that they have any problem. They just come up with what, for their brain, is a logical explanation for this discrepancy. So it's not something that they necessarily realize that they should have any problem, because they still have the experience that they are one person. It's not like they feel that they are two persons. It's only when you do these intricate experiments where they are brought in a situation where things don't really make sense. And some of these patients definitely didn't like this. They didn't like to be brought in a situation where they suddenly realized that, there might be something wrong with me. They could do, all of them, this kind of after rationalization to explain why they did this in a weird way, but it made them feel uncertain about what is actually going on here. So you would definitely also, and it's this research which has led into the whole left brain, right brain discussion, that you have a right brain which, according to some, and this is research from the 1970s, which has been proven wrong, most of it, so I'm only referring to it for historical reasons. The idea that the right brain should be more creative, more musically minded, whereas the left brain would be more logical and would be more mathematically minded. This is wrong. We have two sides of the brain and they work together normally, and it's not like some of us should be more left-sided and some of us should be more right-sided. This is a wrong idea. The two sides of the brain really work together as a whole normally. But it's also true that there are some differences in the way that the two parts of the brain are processing data. So it is clear that the right side of the brain is better at solving tasks which involve spatial relationships. So in tasks where you, for instance, have to, in your mind, move a target or move an object and see if it's same shape as another object, which is maybe turned 180 degrees or something like this. That's usually what the right side of the brain is best at, whereas the left side of the brain is best at sequential tasks to analyze situations where you sort of have a sequence of events and to sort of put them into a logical organization. So this is the findings which have led into this idea of a creative brain, which is more fluffy, form-oriented, to a more mathematical brain. But it's wrong as such. It's just different ways of analyzing things in more detail. And normally we use these different abilities as a whole in order to do the things that we do. But so this mainly gives us some ideas of what it is to being a person and being able to verbalize what is going on in our mind, and especially this ability of after rationalization to make sense of the whole thing, which probably we all do to some extent continuously. That's all I had. Oops, only 10 minutes past.